Good evening, and welcome. I have the privilege to welcome you here to the concluding event of our grand opening of the Seed Center here at EIU. As you may know by now, the Entrepreneurship Center has been officially named the Seed Center, which stands for Sustainable Entrepreneurship through Education and Development. In short, we're planting the seed to grow entrepreneurship in the region. My name is Dr. Marco Grünhagen. I'm the director of the Seed Center, also the Lumpkin Distinguished Professor of Entrepreneurship in the School of Business, and your host for tonight. The Seed Center is a presidential initiative, and its primary educational goal is to create an understanding for starting and managing a profitable business. The Seed Center's vision rests on three pillars: community outreach, student education, and faculty-student research. Community outreach is focused on offering free and confidential coaching to startup businesses and small ventures in a 10-county region around EIU. Regarding student education, the Seed Center has offered the Entrepreneurship Minor since 2010. As you guys may know, it is open to all majors across the EIU campus, and almost 80 students are currently enrolled as Entrepreneurship Minors. The final pillar is faculty-student research, and the Seed Center will begin to offer research funding for projects that involve faculty-student collaboration on entrepreneurship topics across the EIU campus in the next few months. Earlier today, we hosted an open house in the Seed Center suite upstairs as the official launch of its operations. Tonight, we continue the celebration by hosting one of our alumni and one of the Seed Center's coaching success stories. So, without further delay, I'm very proud tonight to introduce to you first Mrs. Ann Hartnett, one of our own EIU graduates. Ann is an accomplished hands-on leader with extensive experience in real estate marketing and media. She specializes in leading teams to create unique, engaging audience experiences. Ann is the co-founder and managing partner of Agent Publishing, a B2B digital media company that supports real estate professionals with information, news, and education. More than a decade after creating Agent Publishing, she continues to work closely with the company's 4 regional media properties, which operate in Atlanta, Houston, Miami, and Boston, with expansion anticipated into Washington, D.C. this year. Prior to the launch of Agent Publishing, Ann staked her claim in marketing, opening her own ad agency which catered to real estate developers and brokerages. As one more piece of testament to her impactful career, Ann was named one of Tech Week Chicago's Women's Leadership Fellows in 2014. So with that, let's give Annie a welcome applause here.
So first off, I want to thank all the students who are here today, because when I was here at Eastern, and when I graduated in 1988, I would have never even thought to come to anything like this, because I had no idea what I wanted to do or where I would be after graduation. So Marco asked me to share my story, and the story is full of trials and tribulations and accidents that had led me to where I am today. So to start back in 1988, I graduated here with a graphic design and marketing minor. And I spent the first 10 years of my career what I call doing the agency tour. I bumped around, spent a year or two at different agencies, different companies, doing graphic design. And I kept leaning more towards the marketing end of it, because I wanted to do more or get more behind the scenes and get strategically involved in what I was trying to visually communicate. So after those 10 years of jumping around, I ended up with a small marketing consultant company in which they gave me the role Director of Marketing Communications. So they had several different disciplines, and when they were working with a specific company to come up with a new product or launch something, I would get involved in the strategy and what goes in behind it before you'd even design or try to market something. And it was a great experience, because the man that I worked for, I was finally at a place where someone let me have the department and let me run with it. So I was doing everything from selling the business in front of clients to designing the business to hiring, just about everything except licking the stamp on the invoice. And after spending 5 years there, and I had brought clients into my own for the communications department, and they had transferred into other disciplines of the company, I got a really low bonus check. And money being the motivator, I thought, you know what? I never thought of going on my own and running my own business, but I had been with this company 5 years and could sell it and do the work. I thought, why not start my own business? So I developed my marketing consulting company. And the first year, I completely bootstrapped myself and basically worked 2 jobs. I would get up at 5 in the morning. I would do my business, my work for my company till 8 o'clock, jump in the shower, run to work. If I had to do anything at lunch, I would go home. I worked very close to work, do things on my own, get back to work till 5 or 5:30, come home and work till 10 o'clock at night. I wanted to make sure that I didn't have that lag of income, having to support myself, and I didn't want to raise funds to do something like that. So I basically bootstrapped myself and did the hard work. So I started my marketing consulting company, and this is prior to the recession. And living in Chicago, it was the boom in real estate. And I was reading in Crane's Chicago Business, a business journal that anyone in business reads in Chicago. There was a man starting out doing small developments who was getting ready and funded to do major subdivisions and major growth and build major homes. So I picked up the phone, called him, got an appointment, and that was my first residential real estate developer client. And in that day, there were condominiums and homes being built all over Chicagoland. So I received my first real estate developer client, and the next thing you know, I had another real estate developer client, and then another, and I pretty much became versed in residential real estate marketing. And what that means is you have a developer who is versed in building buildings or building homes. And his concentration is he wants to build the building. He doesn't know anything about marketing. So my company would come in, and he'd say, I need a name for this 250-unit condo building. And we come up with a name. I need a logo. I need a brochure. I need someone to write the story. I need someone to manage events to promote this. I need an advertising campaign to go out in several different publications and through the web. So I would do that for a series of several developers. And I was sitting in a weekly meeting with one of my developers one day, and he looked at me and he looked at the budget and he said, I'm sick and tired of spending $10,000 a weekend to advertise in the Chicago Tribune. The Chicago Tribune is a consumer publication, and what happens is I get several tire kickers who want to come through my building and look at the pretty models, and none of them are interested in buying a unit. I need to reach agents. How do I reach agents? And I sat at the opposite end of the table from him, and I said, there is no way to reach real estate agents. So at the time, I went back to a client of mine who was also a friend, who is my current business partner. Her name is Marcy, and I sat down and I said, I just had the oddest thing happen. I sat in with one of my clients. He doesn't want to be in the Tribune anymore because he's spending $10,000 a week and he wants to reach agents. How do we do that? And hence we came up with our business concept, was developing a platform not only to reach residential real estate agents, because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of a residential real estate transaction, but there was nothing that was bringing the whole discipline of home buying or selling together. There are many different facets that go on. There's agents who sell your property or help you with the purchase. There's lenders who get involved in financing you. There's appraisers, there's inspectors, there's title companies. And there was nothing bringing the whole community together. So we wrote a business plan. We hired attorneys to look at our Reg D, which is a document that you have to have before you can sell any part or shares of your company. We hired accountants to scrutinize the business plan and our finances, and we were ready to go. And the minute we went to meet with our first investor, 9/11 had happened. So due to the circumstances, we put our business plan on our shelf and spent a year letting things simmer down. We each had our own business going and had fires to put out and clients to work with during that time. And in 2003, we got the band back together and we hit the road again. And we first hit up, of course, friends and family. We were looking to raise $300,000. And we sold it in increments of $25,000. And a friend had introduced me. He said, you need to meet with my friend's investment company. They love to do things like this. I'm sure you guys are great. We sat down and we pitched the investment company. They were all in. They were, we're in, we'll give you, we'll fund at least $100,000. We'll fund a 30-year business. We thought, great. And what happens when you do this is you get almost like a promissory note. They sign, we'll do 50 grand each, we'll sign on the dotted line. When you pull the trigger, come with me, we'll fund it. Well, fundraising takes some time, so 6 months later, we had the promises for the rest of the money, and everyone was getting their checks together to fund the business, and we went back to the $100,000, and we said, great, we're ready. We need to pick up your checks. And they were invested in other things right now, and I just had $100,000 fall out of my business, which is a third of my funding. Now, mind you, at this time, I had already hired people who were giving their 2 weeks' notice and quitting their job. I had secured office space and put money down to get 2 months' rent and sign my life away that I would be able to pay this for the next 2 years. I had bought office equipment, I had bought computers, and I just had a third of my funding fall out. Needless to say, it was a very stressful time, and we were lucky enough that we spent the next 2 weeks going back to our investors and had them pitch a little more. But we had the leeway in the business where we didn't have to have the full $300,000 raised. And there were several people that we pitched at the time who said, I'm not ready, I don't want to invest. So we went about our way. And 6 weeks later, we produced our first magazine, sent it out to everybody who said no to investing or not investing. And within 2 months' time, we had the full $300,000. So it was kind of the golden age in real estate in Chicago. There were several developments going up. I had a magazine that had about 60 to 100 pages of, page after page of suburban, city, condos for sale, homes for sale, homes for sale. And then 2008 hit. And not only was real estate, as you all know, one of the hardest industries hit, media also had been hit pretty hard as well. So I had a company I had Chicago Agent Magazine. We were print and online. We had just opened up a year prior Miami Agent Magazine with the hopes of rolling it out across the country, every 6 months. And the bottom just fell out in my industry. I had 13 employees shared between Miami and Chicago and had to lay off almost half my staff. I didn't take a salary for 6 months. And slowly began to rebuild the company in a little bit different aspect, which is one of the things you always have to do. No matter how hard you plan, things will change, things will happen that you don't expect, technology changes, and you need to be able to pivot. So at that time, as some of you all know, WordPress was really being beefed up and being able to support a lot of content. So we hired someone on staff to come in and rebuild our website to be WordPress and content friendly and be able to create a template that would easily take and then replicate in city after city as we grow. Our business became more web-oriented, which many are now as well. Our clients changed as well. We had a book of business that was mainly developer-based, and so many banks and so many buildings went under that became less part of our business, and the banks started showing up. The banks needed they had just dropped interest rates. They needed people to buy homes, and they needed people to take loans if they were going to continue their business model. So we went through the shift of the banks coming on and being present and wanting to align with agents because it's how they get business, or an easy way for them to get business. And then as the market tanked in 2008, about 20% of agents didn't renew their license, quit the business due to hard times. And all of a sudden, the brokerages realized that they need to beef up and recruit. So it shifted again and became a recruiting tool for the brokerages to get quality agents and to advertise and promote what they had to offer as an individual. Excuse me, sorry. So right now, what we have going on in our business is, especially in media, there's a big technology shift that's still happening. People aren't buying ads, especially print ads like they do anymore, and people are developing ways to promote and seek revenue for their content. So we're in a phase right now where we're now in 5 cities. We'll be in 2 more cities by the end of the year. And we're ready to position a new product and get ready to use new technology, which is video that's coming to our platform. And our goal is to take our tens of thousands of pages and produce training and education modules for agents. So we're in a state right now where we are self-funded, and we're looking to beta test a video career education site with 30 videos that go to agents on how to do their business better. And once we get that beta and prove the business model, we plan on taking it to a group of investors and look to get a large group of funding and blow it out of the water. Yes?
Would it be fair to characterize what in the middle part, at least, that you're describing, you were a media company focused on real estate market? Is that fair?
We're a real estate money that served agents. So or served anybody. It's a B2B. So it wasn't, there was a lot of content in there that wasn't meant for the consumer. And what I mean by meant is there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes of a residential real estate transaction. So if we had a developer who couldn't get rid of what we called the last 10 pounds, which were the last 5% of their units because there was a bad view or they were undesirable, they would say to agents, or they'd want to advertise to the agents community, not only are you going to make commission on this, but I'll give you a flat screen TV, I'll pay you an extra 3 points of commission, which the consumer would not be so happy to hear about.
Sure. Follow-on question, and maybe one more. It's difficult to shift your business model, as you know. How did you decide to shift to what you're doing now? Why did you choose?
I guess it's kind of like what the market presented. And, you know, I think a lot of, you know, you hear about a lot of media companies laying off because they're still using dated, old traditional models. They still have a huge staff. I think now there's easy ways. You know, our freelance staff is huge. You know, I'm back up to 11 employees, and find that the freelance market is huge in the media business. So I don't have to employ or do payroll tax, which was huge in Chicago and Illinois. So I think that we're nimble enough where if we have to make a pivot or change the model, I don't have to let go 50% of my staff, or, you know, maybe switching 1 or 2 of my staff out for a different trade or different capabilities.
One thing, I think something that may be helpful, it certainly is here, and also the students. One of the things I noticed in your thread here, you synergized the experience that you got early on here, and you still are.
Yes.
I have a sense that you're probably back to using more of the graphic design and that idea in your development or training materials and things like that than you perhaps have even were.
It comes through a lot in the branding, and I'm lucky enough I have a business partner who the branding, the advertising, the marketing is really my domain of it, outside of growing the business and running the business, and she's very versed in training and sales. So I've been allowed to build a staff that has the same like-minded ideals of what the media company should look and feel like and develop its voice.
That's great, thank you. One final thing, this
Sure.
is personal interest.
Sure.
If you look over there at that poster for a minute, there's a circular thing on top with a picture of EIU
Yes.
from the air, which is very compelling.
Yes.
From some of my old synergies, I know how to do that. I'm a quadcopter operator today with cameras on it and stuff like that, a drone guy. Is that being used in your business today, or do you
It
see
is.
that?
It is. Chicago has a mandate, though, where drones used for business purposes are illegal at this point. I had a client who actually used a drone, and didn't get busted for it. And it was selling one of the Blackhawks large luxury condos with a huge deck with a hot tub.
Very interesting. You know, okay, I won't go into it for all the audience, but that, you know, as new technologies get developed, and this one's one that people are very emotional about. I'm also, by the way, I'm a commercial pilot, incorporated, all that kind of stuff too, so I know all the air regulation stuff. The fact is, the FAA can't even look past that regulation, and probably the city of Chicago can't either. They may get away with it right now until it gets tested. Our world is going, anyway, I thank you for your time.
No, sure.
For all of you, I'm very interested in that aspect of where we might take some of that technology, and I just figured you would be in it. So it's a mandate in Chicago, but do you see that being used around the country or not? It just strikes me that people find it interesting in the sense of ego? Here's my house, or here's a house.
Oh yeah, especially in the luxury market. All the home. There's a lot of beautiful, large estates on the North Shore. They're always have drones or a pilot.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Yes. Hi.
In the beginning, you were saying when you first started this, how you run into like a lot of issues, especially like with money and
Mm-hmm.
was there ever at one point in time maybe like a backup plan, or how did you adjust to these issues that you came across?
Well, there was no backup plan. I didn't feel like when a third of our money dropped out, because I felt a tremendous responsibility to the people who had quit their jobs already and gave 2 weeks. I knew right then they were relying on me. I couldn't eat for 3 days when that happened. I knew we had to get the money because I couldn't let people who were quitting their jobs because they believed in something I was creating. I just knew, you just had to work harder. I had to work harder to get it. I had to network more. I had to do whatever it takes. And I follow Howard Tillman. Any of you heard of him? I highly suggest you sign up for his blog if you're seriously interested in entrepreneurship. He's amazing. He has a blog. It's called "You Get What You Work For, Not What You Wish For," and that's pretty much how it works. Any other questions? Yes.
For the young people here, what one word of advice you have for them? A lot of these are entrepreneurship entrepreneurs that you are obviously very successful. You work very hard. What's the one thing you might think that they might be understanding that?
Well, I really think when I was when I was here and in their shoes, I don't know if a lot of you have a clear vision, but I had no idea what I wanted to do or how I was going to do it. And I really think, I didn't have any real estate background or magazine background. I really think I worked for a lot of different companies and I got exposed to a lot of different things. Go intern for everybody and anybody that you can. Work in different industries that you never thought you would work in and experience it. You don't have to make it your life. But, I thought I would be in marketing and advertising my whole life. And through that, I got to be an expert in residential real estate marketing, something I never knew or expected that I would do. And through being an expert in that, I figured out where there was a hole in the market and where I could disrupt communication and where I could make money and have a business and enjoy doing it. So I really, I floundered. I didn't flounder, I had jobs and I could pay my way, but I really didn't have a clear vision till I was 10 years out and experienced many things and just your peers and see what they're doing and what they're enjoying and what's successful for them. So I don't feel bad if you don't know what you want to do or where your life's going, but go out and work and experience having a career, and you can switch and pivot and do whatever you want. Yes?
I guess it's kind of a two-part
Mhm.
question. You said you didn't go into a business for yourself until 10 years out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it's even viable to go into a business shortly after college, or do you think it's something you should have more real-world experience and be more stable?
I think it depends on the industry you're getting in. If you have a family business that's in retail and you're going to open up a retail shop, you probably have a lot of knowledge or experience in that world. But if you're looking to do something, create something different or unique, I think that the real world experience is very valuable. Yes, hi.
Hello. You started out and you said that you started to get more clients that were more resident. What was your plan before? Like, I'm not saying that, but
I didn't really have a plan. I knew that my prior position at the company I was at, I knew I could sell the work. I didn't have a sales background, but I really didn't have any ego in picking up the phone and calling somebody. I really, I didn't take it personally if someone was like, I'm not interested. I read business journals. I saw what people are doing. I paid attention to who was starting up because I knew they probably didn't have a marketing firm. So I kind of became very interested and on the pulse of what was happening in business. And then, you know, once you land one client in one industry, you know, and you learn the ins and outs of a real estate developer and what they need and what you want, and the next real estate developer pitch you go to, you know the lingo, you know everything a little better, your portfolio shows that you've done the work and you understand their problems and what their needs are, it kind of falls like a domino, or it fell like a domino for me. Yes?
Would you ever consider doing, like, working with another type of business?
All the time. Yes?
Do you feel that your background in graphic design has made you a stronger marketer?
I feel that my background in marketing has made me a better designer and brander. I feel like I have an advantage in marketing because I kind of understand, I understand a lot about design and how to communicate. I guess it goes both ways. But I definitely think no matter what your major is, it's great that you're having some, I mean, I don't have a full business degree, but I have, I had a business minor, which was really, really helpful. Thank you.
All right, for our second speaker, I'm going to ask Tiffany Klein up here. Tiffany's our Seed Center entrepreneurial coach, and she's going to introduce our next speaker. Tiffany?
Thank you, Marco. Our next speaker is Mr. Steve Raymond. He was, as you can say, I guess he was born into the newspaper industry. His father, Willard Raymond, owned the Golden Prairie News, which covered Moequa, Assumption, and Macon. Steve began his career in the newspaper business, we'll just say over 30 years ago. I won't put a definite number on that. I'll let him tell you that one. He began as a sports editor at the Canton Daily Ledger. He moved up to general manager. From then he went on to become publisher at the Herald Tribune in Batesville, Indiana. In 1999, Steve came to the Effingham Daily News in Effingham, Illinois, obviously. Started there as the advertising director and was soon promoted to publisher in 2001. He was with the Daily News until 2012, where his big change came in. He decided it was time to start his own paper, and he left the Daily News. I personally got to meet with Steve and his very supportive, wonderful wife, Ruth, in 2012, when they sought out guidance from the Business Solutions Center, which was the predecessor to Seed. And I got to meet with them, work with them, have the privilege of working with them from startup stage to planning stage. Steve was, and I think I just told him this tonight, he was actually my really first hands-on client that I got to work with all by myself. I didn't want to tell him that because I thought it'd scare him. But he's obviously turned out quite well. So, but Steve put his heart and worked his rear off for this business. A lot of times with my job, I'll see people come in and say, write this for me, write this business plan for me. That was not Steve. I would offer him the suggestions or help. He would work at that business plan and the funding and figure it out. And he set the bar for many clients afterwards. The heart and the hard work that he put into planning his business still shows through 2.5 years later in every issue of his paper that goes out, which there's a stack of over here. One of Steve's main ideas from the beginning was he wanted to be a local newspaper. You can turn on CNN for national news. You can turn on WAND for aerial regional news. But to get the local news of that real good stuff right here in your community, you read Steve's paper. And he still continues to keep that aspect, keeps a tight community aspect. The first issue of the Effingham Tetopolis News Report was distributed for free to everybody in the Effingham and Tetopolis zip codes on August 2nd, 2012. The paper is still distributed for free to those zip codes every week. And every other week is now a countywide newspaper because everybody was so enthralled with this new newspaper. Everybody wanted it. So he does a countywide. Steve also gives back so much to the community. One of the things he does a business progress edition, a yearly business progress edition. He highlights those businesses that have had something great happen or new businesses. So he highlights these entrepreneurs and these businesses in the community. He also sits on the board of the Effingham Regional Incubator Network to make sure that entrepreneurs have all the assistance and the space that they need to grow their business. So please welcome publisher, community leader, entrepreneur, Mr. Steve Raymond.
I'm not sure there's much left to talk about. I hope that was very nice. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, congratulations on the opening of the Seed Center. Hopefully through the years this is going to turn out to where you can educate and help promote and encourage fellow entrepreneurs of the future. I'm not a speaker. I'm really impressed you did this with no notes. My 61-year-old memory isn't going to allow that, so I've got my cheat sheets here. So hopefully you will understand that. I really appreciate being a part of this program tonight. I always welcome the opportunity to talk about the newspaper industry in general and the Effingham and Teutopolis News Report specifically. I'm fortunate to live in a community like Effingham. Entrepreneurship is encouraged and promoted there in a very big way. Have all of you, maybe some of you have heard of the CEO classes that have started up. Several years ago it started up and kids that were interested in this, there was kind of like a selection process, but it started being for students in the Effingham and Teutopolis high schools. It has since expanded. Now it includes students from every high school in Effingham County. Beginning next year, there will be a second class now offered. They just had too many good kids that they were having to turn away. They've already named a new instructor or an additional instructor. Craig Linval, I don't know if some of you here may know Craig. Craig was the initial instructor for the CEO class. He is now literally traveling across the state of Illinois and across our country promoting and helping establish CEO programs. It's really an amazing story. But the support, that financial support largely comes from the community in Effingham. That's a type of support and encouragement they're receiving. Hopefully someday these young people are going to come back to our community. They're going to start a business, they're going to start providing jobs, and it makes a lot of sense what they're doing today, and they need to be commended for that. So my venture when I decided to do this was welcomed and supported in that community. And I think I'm safe to say, I would not have met the same reception in every community. About a month ago, Jennifer Guerin and I were in contact about tonight's program, and I kind of asked her, because this is not something I do, I asked her, what should I focus on? And she suggested that I focus on my journey, kind of how did you get to where you are today, maybe talk a little bit about the newspaper industry as a whole, and then talk about maybe my product as well. Now, Tiffany went through and told you some of this. I was born and raised in a little town of Assumption. It's about 45 to 60 miles from here. I was one of 42 proud graduates in the class of 1971, so I'm starting to give away my age again. The school now is Central A&M. And when I was in school, that would not have been possible. We were arch rivals in sports. In sports vernacular, we hated each other. And I guess that's why it took 3 referendums before they finally voted it in to do the consolidation. In the very first year they were consolidated. The football team finished second place in the state. All was well. So nothing since then. Everything has been just fine. After high school, I attended Taylor University in Upland, Indiana. It's a small Christian liberal arts school. The enrollment when I was there was about 1,500, and from a kid from the cornfields of Assumption, that seemed like a pretty big school. At that point in my life, I really had very little direction If somebody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I probably couldn't have given them an answer. My majors changed 3 times during the time that I was there, and I'm going to guess maybe this would be an unusual combination. I went from accounting to piano to phys ed. So a little bit different direction. And then on top of that, I never finished. I ended up going home and working for my father, who just happened to own the newspaper there in Assumption. He bought the paper in 1959, so I've essentially been around the newspaper business almost since birth. I look around and I know there's looks like a lot of students here, so many of you are not going to have any idea what I'm talking about now. I remember the hot lead days. For some of the older folks sitting in the here, we remember that. At 9 and 10 years old, I wasn't allowed to stay home and watch the cartoons. My dad was shaking me and getting me up, taking me to the office. I had those glamour jobs, sweeping up the wood floor, cleaning the toilet, dumping the trash, stuff like that. I eventually graduated from that, and he let me go down to Isom's Hardware, fill up the gas cans with white gas so I could bring it back and clean the rollers on the press. Back in those days, a lot of the ads were set with handheld type. And again, that's nothing that you would see today. You would more see these drawers from these are now hanging in people's homes, and they have little miniatures in them now. But they would set all this type. Well, after press day was over, somebody had to throw all that stuff back into all the drawers, and you can guess who got to do that job. To this day, that is the single job I hated doing the most. He eventually taught me how to run the linotype and an old letterpress. We could print 2 pages at once. If any of you have seen if you've been in a newspaper or a print operation, where we get printed now, they can print 32 to 40 pages at once. They can probably clip it off somewhere between 15,000 to 20,000 copies an hour. So it clips along pretty good. We could print 2 pages at once, and you fed the individual single sheets of newsprint through 1 sheet at a time. So it wasn't fast. It was a much more physically demanding job. Believe me, we would never trade and go back to those days. After I left college, again, I still really didn't feel like I had a whole lot of direction, and I basically escaped back and worked my father. And I started doing some writing, especially the sports. Sports has always been a passion for me. It is to this day. Sold some ads, helped Dad a little bit with the job printing. I think we would all, or I think you will, there are some moments in your life that at the very time it happens seems insignificant. And then as you look back on that time, you realize that was a particular moment that changed the direction in your life forever. That day for me happened paper day. My father, that's way back before the computer days. Everything was laid out by hand. And Dad would almost every week, Dad would take the pages to Pana. That's where we got our paper printed at the time. There was only, at that time, there was probably less than half a dozen offset presses in the state then. And they had a small press in Pana. For whatever reason, I don't remember now, Dad couldn't go that week. And he asked me if I would be willing to take the pages. I said, sure, no problem. I pulled in at exactly the same time that Tom Phillips, who's a longtime owner of the Pana News Palladium, pulled in. We get out of the car, we're walking in the building, just a very simple question. Steve, I see you're back working for your dad. Is that something you're going to plan to do? I said, I don't know. And I told him, I said, boy, the perfect job. No, I'd love to be a sports writer. That was it. Nothing more to it. Tom went off, did his thing. I took the pages down. Well, what you don't know at the time, there was a young man who was a reporter working at the Canton Daily Ledger who used to work for Tom some years back. Just so happened their sports editor was leaving. This guy calls Tom, says, you don't know anybody who wants to be a sports writer. 2 days later, Tom calls me, gives me the name of the editor, Pete Falcone, says you need to make a telephone call. I call Pete, I get an interview. Lo and behold, January 9th, 1978, I'm the new sports editor at the Canton Daily Ledger. Now, when I first got hired, I thought it was my wonderful clips that I had generated when I was with my dad. Because you have to understand, when I started at the Canton Daily Ledger, I didn't know how to operate a camera. I couldn't lay out a page. I couldn't write a lead paragraph. Now, that's pretty basic stuff in the journalism world, okay? So I figured it has to be these great great clips, these examples I took. Well, I didn't have to work there very long. I realized the reason they hired me is they offered me the job at $4 an hour, and I said yes. So, but that was the start that I needed. Over the next 10 years, it was hard for me to get out of sports, and I'll just tell you, if there'd been any money in it, I'd still be in sports today. But there's not, so I'm not. I had a chance to be a city editor, an ad director, an ad manager, and then a general manager. I had the opportunity to kind of learn the newspaper business from all angles. That really, really helped pave the way for me. At that time, we was part of a group called American Publishing Company. An opportunity came to go, as Tiffany said, to Batesville, Indiana, the Herald Tribune. I went there for 3 years. It was a weekly when I got there. I took it to a twice-a-week operation in my final year. My wife, who's from Taylorville, and I, we got to a point, parents were getting older and started developing some health issues. We wanted to try and get a little closer to home. And so the opportunity within the same company came to go to Olney as a publisher there. And so went in 91, was there until October of 99. I don't know if any of you know Dennis DeRosset. Dennis is the president of the Illinois Press Association. At the time, Dennis was the publisher at Effingham, and they had an opening for an ad director. Dennis gave me a call. I was at a point in my life where I was ready to make a change. I'm a small town guy. I was born and raised in a little town, and Chicago's a great place to visit, but it's great I can go up and I can get back. And so Effingham's about as big a town as I wanted to be a part of, but I thought this would be a good opportunity for me. And Dennis was there about a year and a half, and then in May of 2001, they promoted me to publisher, and I stayed there until I left to start my own newspaper. All of that really helped, I guess, prepare me for, I guess we can call it my entrepreneurial journey, okay, for, however we want to do that. I'd always kind of dreamed of maybe having my own paper, but I always wrote it off and said that the timing wasn't quite right. And really, I guess to be real honest with myself, is either I was scared or I was just willing to make that type of a commitment. So naturally, I waited to take the plunge when the newspaper industry was trending downward at a very rapid rate. Readership at most paid newspapers, in fact, at a lot of paid products overall, is declining. Some of that decline is in an absolute free fall. Plus, not only readership has declined, ad revenues are starting to decline. About that same time, you have a lot of magazines that were hitting the market. Obviously, online advertising opportunities were escalating rapidly. Even things like your classified ad page, no longer protected. Things like Craigslist was coming up. The classified page has always been one of the real staples for any local community newspaper. In fact, you can really determine a lot about the strength of a particular market, go into that community, pick up the local community newspaper, and open up to the classified page. And the way you tell is the number of those, and these are the things that have been eroding, but you used to be able to tell the number of those for sale items. Who is selling their refrigerator or their sofa or their lawnmower? And it makes sense because these people were selling their old so they could go out and buy new. And when you see, and you'd see these classified pages full, that really was a very good indication, hey, this is a pretty strong market. But even that has been eroding. In fact, a lot of the classified advertising you see in newspapers today, if it's not being given away free, it's pretty close. And that's the only way they're basically running it now more for just readership than they are for a revenue source. I would like to talk to you a little bit about the newspaper industry. I will tell you up front, this is my opinion, okay? This is my opinion. I've been around it a long time. I guess professionally you can say I've been around it for 36 years. So I've primarily worked for groups, newspaper groups. So I'm going to share with you my opinion. Back in the day, there was nothing that was any more local in a community than that community newspaper. For many of those communities, in fact, for most of those communities, they were individually owned and operated. And for many of those, They had been in the family for many, many generations, and those local roots went deep. Unfortunately, that has changed significantly. You would be hard-pressed today to find an individually owned newspaper. Almost everything today is corporately owned. Here's a tidbit of information that this might help you win a contest someday. Did you realize that there are more newspapers in the state of Illinois than any other state in the country? And the reason for that is because of all of the small weekly newspapers. Other states just don't have it. And just in the county where I'm from, they've got a small weekly in Altamont. They've got a small weekly that serves T-Town and Dietrich. They've got a real small weekly that's in Beecher City. These are towns, some of these with less than 1,000 population, and this is customary throughout the state. But that is why. At first, when these groups started buying the newspapers, it was still a very entrepreneurial approach. You and I may both be publishers in the same company, but how we go about reaching our goals and our objectives was entirely up to me and my community. I could base my promotions, I could base my product, I could base everything I did strictly on my community. Every community is unique unto itself. What works in one town is not automatically going to work in another town. The cookie cutter approach has never worked in the newspaper industry, and I don't believe it ever will. Unfortunately, with our corporately owned folks, they get 2 or 3 cronies, they sit in their office in their headquarters, and they make these decisions, and they send out all these directives and initiatives without ever one time asking the people sitting in that local community, is this something that can work? Why or why not? And you see the result of that type of thinking. Many newspapers, big and small, are being challenged mightily today. Serving the reader is no longer the main emphasis. Advertising promotions are no longer structured with the business in mind. It used to be, you heard that old saying, you make the cash register ring. And that was the goal. Your newspapers were filled with local news. It didn't matter if you're on page 2 or page 22. There's going to be local news around it. And that advertising hopefully would be seen. There wasn't a lot of special sections. There weren't a lot of these goofy things they offer now. That's all done with strictly the idea of generating a little more revenue for the newspaper with no caring, really, whether or not it benefits that advertiser or not. Believe me, I've worked for 24 years for a corporate structure. And as time went on, it got worse and worse. And toward the end, you get to where you feel you're only as good as the last profit and loss statement that you turned in. In addition, pay scales ridiculously low, few to no retirement benefits, very little investment back into the operation. I worked at one newspaper. Every time it rained, we literally had 15 to 20 buckets set up around the operation to get the leaks from the roof, and the company, despite multiple years of trying, invested not 1 cent in replacing that. But at the same time, they expected very sizable marginal returns. And unfortunately, this has just gotten worse as the years progressed. And with readership falling and advertising revenues falling off, it just becomes kind of a vicious cycle. And when you add all that together, it's no wonder why newspapers have been challenged like never before. Now, that's not a real glamorous picture. And yet, I wanted to start one of those. So, believe me, some of my closest friends thought I had lost all sense of my mental capacity. I finally reached a point I just didn't want to be a part of the other anymore. And I felt like I had 3 options. I could either go to another newspaper, which I'd just be trading one set of issues for another. I could do something entirely differently. Now, what the heck would that be? I've not done anything differently since I was 6 years old. Or I start my own paper. So I began seriously to explore that option. I sought counsel with friends in the industry. I'm very fortunate. I've been involved and here I know a lot of good newspaper people. I also talked with some of our local people, business, community, local community leaders, people that I knew. I wouldn't put them listed as they were good buddies, but they were people who I had a great deal of respect for. And I just sat down with them, kind of said, here's a what if. And I received nothing but encouragement and support from the very beginning. I then began putting a business plan together. Now, the numbers part of it was pretty easy for me. I've been doing budgets for about 26, 28 years. At the same time, this Best Center that Tiffany mentioned had their office with the Chamber of Commerce. And they scheduled a program called How to Start Your Own Business. So my wife and I decided that we would go and attend, just see what they had to say. That was a very wise choice on our part. I was presented some information I had not thought of and would not have thought of. Plus, they had a little bit about business plans, and became pretty evident I was going to need a little help. That the business plan was going to be much more than just a series of numbers. That's when I met Tiffany. I will tell you, that's also when my business plan started to get better. She not only provided ideas, she also pointed me to a website that also had ideas and examples of other business plans that I could look at and observe. I had all the numbers. I had market information, who the competition was, sales plans, revenue and expense projections. That part of it I had. But my plan didn't include things like an overall general description. I didn't have a mission statement, information about personnel, the obstacles we might face, how we would overcome them, how we would even handle credit. I didn't have a contingency plan. I didn't have an exit strategy. I didn't have a list of who my legal and professional support team would be. Okay, there was a few holes in the plan. So we went from there, but Tiffany was great to work with. She was friendly. She was knowledgeable. When I met with her, I felt like I was the most important client she had. I didn't know at that time I was the only client she had, so that would have made a difference, you know, the things you learn after the fact, right? But I believe when I met with her, I always came away believing she wanted me to be successful, and she really worked to try to help me with that. I don't know how many times she must have read through the plan, but she always came back with a suggestion. And it was always a good suggestion. Now, the one night, in fact, she was reminding about this earlier this evening, I had contacted her. Well, I didn't know that she had had the flu. And I said something about reading the plan. And she says, yeah, I read the first page and I got sick. I thought, man, there's 20-some pages here. You know, this is going. So I felt better when I found out she had the flu. So anyway. I can't explain to you how much better my document was. And we can talk about starting our own businesses all day long. At the end of the day, for most of us, we're going to need some kind of a financial support system in place, whether that's raising money through investors or like I went through the banking route. I went to every bank in Effingham, and I presented my plan to every bank. Not every one of them was interested, but several of them were. I got complimented numerous times about how thorough and complete my business plan was, and I will sit here and I will tell you that would not have happened without Tiffany's help, and so I thank you very much for that. But once my funding was in place, then everything was a go. She's told you a little bit. I don't think I can venture far from this as this goes off, but we are a free distribution newspaper. People question that. I think in a day and age where we live with the way paid products are falling by the wayside, I believe that's important, that we go into every home. Whether it is a news message or it is an advertising message, a lot of people are going to see that. We are 100% local news, front to back. All right. I brought some copies up here, and if you'd like to look at them, you're welcome to. When you pick it up, it ain't going to be fancy. It's not going to be, it's not a slick magazine look, okay, which are great, by the way. I'm not sure it's old school. I don't think I'd go that far, but we have a very conservative layout. The whole goal from the typeface I used for the articles, to the typeface we used for the headlines, to the typeface for cut lines, everything we did, we designed it trying to be good for the reader. We wanted it to be easy to read. We try to package things that make sense together as much as we can. And it was absolutely paramount for us. We wanted to be all local news. I started out with a staff of 9. Well, I'll tell you, this week we're 32 pages. Okay, now you all are accustomed to some weekly newspapers, and they tend to be on the smallish side. I can tell you our smallest paper has been, since we started, has been 16. Our largest paper has been 48. In the last 4 weeks, we've been 36, 40, 16, and 32. So we have a pretty good sized product, which also tells you we're getting good advertising support. And for us, that's where it has to be, because I'm mailing it out free. I'm using good old postal system. I'm mailing that out free of charge. So my eggs are in the advertising basket, and I knew that going in. To have a paper like mine, you've got to have somewhat of a decent sized community to be in. You've got to have the advertising base has got to be there to give you that, to give you the chance, because we have to generate a good amount of advertising every week to keep doing what we're doing. I started out with a staff of 9, counting me. Other than one, everybody had worked for me in the past. 4 of them were working for me when we left. There was a lot of frustration in the building, and I wasn't the only one. We had more than 150 years of experience on the staff. There was very little learning curve required. We knew the newspaper business. We knew our community leaders. We knew our business contact. We knew our market. We hit the ground running, and so we didn't have to go through that first month or first couple months trying to get our feet wet. We knew what we were doing, and we had a plan from the beginning. And if one of the things one of the gentlemen here asked a question, recommend one of the things, if you're looking to get in a business, thoroughly make your plan. Okay, and it's not just the numbers. I mean, things when you talk about typeface, to some people that'd be pretty boring. That was something that was very important to me. I said I want our paper to be easily read. And so there's a lot of what some people would call minutia, but that minutia can be very, very important. Our niche is feature and human interest stories. We cover school boards, we cover city councils, but you will rarely see a hard news story on our front page. That's not who we are. Our focus is people. Our focus is the human interest. This week, we have 2 love stories on the front to coincide with Valentine's Day. Okay, and they're cool love stories. They really are. We don't try to be like a daily. In fact, the very first day that I met with my staff, I told them the more we try to be like a daily, the less successful we'll be. That's not who we are, and that's not who we're going to try to be. As a weekly paper, there are some limitations, and you just have to accept that moving forward. We have a very positive tone to our newspaper. We're not going to skew a story. We're not going to take a good story, make it bad, or a bad story, make it good. But every story possible, we're going to look for the good. We're going to try to put our community's best foot forward. We will always look for the positive side of the story first. Our print quality is good. Our color quality is not only good, but it's consistently good. And we get our paper print in Decatur. It's the same people that own Charleston and Mattoon. Okay? The Decatur Herald and Review have been absolutely terrific to work with. They are part of the reason for our success. I couldn't have asked for a better group of folks, really, to work with. And they were not the closest. They were not the cheapest. But I could get one-stop shopping. They print it. They label it. Well, don't have to label it. Never mind. They print it. They bag it. They tag it. We pick it up. All we have to do is take it to the post office. And that's what I need with a staff our size. We didn't really have the size to do anything else. Our setup is a little unusual. The first and third weeks, we only go to Effingham and to Topless. Circulation's 10,000. It's every home, in town, rural route. After a few months, we tried something. We tried going countywide, and it really did well. And so we now go countywide the second and the fourth Thursdays of each month. That's 16,000, again, every household. We also do sell subscriptions if people live outside the area. Right now, about 175, and I just counted today, we go into 17 states. And I'm proud to say one of our subscribers is Tiffany Klein. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed writing and talking to people. I'm telling you, there are so many good people. Ruth and I have lived in several places, and that's one thing we found out. There's good and interesting people everywhere you live. I'm one of these guys, I believe every person has a story to tell. Now, some don't know what that story is, and some won't share it with you no matter what you do. But I guarantee you, every person has a story to tell, and that's what we find. That's what we try to find out. That, as I've said before, that is what kind of what our niche is. Personally, I do a feature or two most weeks. I cover all the sports. Remember the passion I told you about? Well, it's still there. In fact, this was the one night I don't have a ball game to cover, so that worked out really well. I type some releases. I lay out almost all the news pages. I help with the sales plan. I work with the post office. Don't know how much you have to work with the post office at all. If you can avoid that, avoid that. They are, ever since they've made a lot of these changes, good for you. Yeah. Post offices are getting more and more difficult and more challenging to work with. Plus any administrative things. Remember those glamorous jobs I told you about? They're back. I get to dump the trash, and every once in a while I get to vacuum the floor. So, but you know, I've not worked this many hours in many, many years, and I love it. You know, I feel like I'm doing newspaper the way newspaper is supposed to be. It's supposed to be about people. Newspaper is supposed to be about your community. It's granted, we open our door every day. You have to make money at it, and I'm not dismissing that. But when the bottom line becomes pretty much the only focal point, your product, your mission, your statement, your what is gone. Is gone, and that unfortunately is what I feel has happened so much. One other very important part of this is my wife, Ruth. She has been 100% supportive of me from day one. There have been challenging times, there have been frustrating days, and she's always been there to be encouraging and be supportive. I thank her. I love her very much. I couldn't do this if it wasn't for her support. She is a retired teacher. I think I told you she graduated in 1975 from Eastern. She's a retired teacher, and I've now put her to work for me. She works a couple days and proofs. So if you look through the paper and you find any typos, talk to her. A lot of people want to put newspapers down today. I'm here to tell you, I don't think we have a newspaper problem. I believe we have a focus problem. The people who are at the head of these organizations, what the goal is of getting that paper out on the street. At the News Report, our focus is about our readers. It was from day one, it still is today. We want as much local news and as many local photos in our paper. There is not a week that I don't have stuff left. The community has supported us tremendously. They send their news in. I love the fact now that we get phone calls wanting to know why their stuff didn't get in the paper. That's a great sign. But that's our niche. And I think when you're going in, if you're going to go into a business, whatever that business is, you have to decide what is your niche. Very few businesses can open and be everything to everybody. You've got to figure out what that is. What are you going to concentrate on? What is that focus going to be? And then go with that. From a newspaper standpoint, the local news, I firmly believe that's a part of the newspaper equation people can't take away. Okay? There are online things. I guarantee you, if done right, there's nothing that'll compare to a good local community newspaper. It's what keeps people informed. And I believe that local news, I believe the kind of goal we have, to me, that's what's going to keep newspapers relevant and viable. I think there's a chance there's going to be others that may look at the type of business model that we've put together in Effingham. Again, they're going to be in the right community for that, but I think it's possible. If you're a business person, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to talk to you about advertising. Would you prefer putting your ad in a paper that goes to some of the homes and has a little bit of local news, and then the rest of it is filled with AP stories that could be anywhere from 12 to 36 hours old? Or would you rather put it in a product that is 100% local news and is going to be delivered to 100% of the homes in your market? Based on the response we've received the past 2.5 years, it's clear that people are enjoying reading and receiving the news report. The support and encouragement we've received, real honestly, at times has been humbling. It has far exceeded what I ever imagined. My wife will tell you, especially early on, well, although it's still happening, it's rare that we go out to a restaurant or that someone doesn't come up to me, and most times I don't even know who they are. Some comes up to me and thanks us for starting the paper, for providing something that is a good local resource and is a good reflection of the communities that we're trying to serve. How can a community of 12,000 people support 2 newspapers? I think the answer to that's real simple. Saturation and content. We're all local news delivered to every home. That's a really good combination to have in our business. Again, I want to thank Tiffany for all the help that she gave me. It was very much appreciated. Marco, thanks to the Seed Center for inviting me to be a part of the program tonight. I feel real honored to be here. And I encourage you, don't give up or dismiss newspapers. If done correctly, a local community newspaper always has been and always will be a vital part of the local community. Thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any. We pretty much restrict the focus to Effingham County. And real honestly, even more so Effingham and Teutopolis. I don't have the size staff. I've given thought to going countywide every week. But when you do that, it also changes the responsibility that you will have to the people in those other communities. And I'd have to add more than one person in order to do that adequately. I'm just not at a point financially I can do that yet. But that's where I hope to be. Yes? Well, let me put it this way. Community involvement is never going to be a bad thing. The networking opportunities, but I tell you what, and I say this a lot, there's that old adage, to see and be seen. For others to see you involved in that local community, there's a real value to that. But I also think if you're going to be a part of any town, any community, I think it's our responsibility to get involved to some degree. Now, to what degree, I think is up to the individual. I know some people that have been on umpteen boards and councils and groups. They may not go to any of them, but they're a member of them. I have never believed that. I may not be on as many groups as others, but the ones that I'm on, I want to make sure that I give my fair share of time to be involved. Now, that's just me, but I believe there is nothing but value to being involved in your local community. Yes, sir. I'd call Tiffany to start with. I didn't like the website. The website that she told me about, or that I told you about, where I had no idea that website existed until I got that information. And then what I liked about this is there's a ton of information out there about a business plan. Not all of it was going to be apropos to what I was doing, but most of it is generic enough. You're going to need to provide some information for a variety of those topics, okay? But as you go on that site, then you can pick and choose what you think is important. Tiffany, you might be able to tell me. I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't remember the web address for that site. But I bet Tiffany might still have it. I would hope. And if you give me a card or something, I'd be happy to look to see if I still have that in my notes from my startup. But there are, and I'm sure there are plenty of other sites like that would be available. It was a huge help to me. And then to have someone like Tiffany that I could take and she would look over, and she's the one that told me, I never thought anything about, what happens if you die, or what happens, when you get done and you're going to sell it, or you're going to do what, that was nothing like what I ever did with budgets. I would have no more thought of putting that kind of information in there than the man moon. Would have never happened. But it was working with her and her going through and showing me, like I said, I felt, I was proud of my business plan when I got done, and I walked into the banks and handed them that. Now, was there still maybe a question here or there they wanted to ask? Sure, But as far as, I really felt that I had a thorough, complete document, and I thought it addressed really almost all of the questions that they would have. So that site, the combination of the site and working with Tiffany, that's all I did. I mean, those things plus, like I said, I knew the budget type of stuff. I knew how to put the financial numbers together. Like I said, I think that the Seed Center, I have no doubt, could direct you to some sites that could help you with that. Yes, sir. I would assume I didn't, that isn't part of the business plan that I needed help with, okay? So I didn't go down that route with Tiffany as far as putting the numbers and things together. My guess is, I mean, this is to educate future entrepreneurs. The business plan is a vital part of that. I can't help but believe there are sites, there are individuals in the Seed Center that can help you with that. I'm not sure how I do that. I'm not trying to avoid the question. I'm not sure. In my mind, sustainability would be a year from now. I'm still business printing the paper, and again, not trying to cut you short on that answer. The Herald and Review does use recycled paper. Okay, soy inks. Midwest states wanted to desperately use those in the early years of the soy-based inks. It was too oily. You think you have rub off on some newspapers now? It was horrible. The soy-based inks really took a step backwards simply because it just wasn't in the best interest of that. But recycled newsprint is used almost everywhere now. Okay? Along with most places, it's become the width of the paper has gotten much smaller. What else? Okay, great. Thank you very much.